This is Unit 6, Pre-Calculus, Chapter 4, really sections 4.5 through 4.7. This is the review. I'm going to do numbers 5 through 8. All right, so number 5 here, we have a sine graph. It's moved to the right 90 because of the minus 90, so that's going to be to the right pi over 2. It's also going to be moved down 1. My period is going to remain 2 pi, my amplitude is going to be 1, and there are never any asymptotes for sine. All right, so when I do this again, I typically draw out my graph first before I move it to the right. So I'm going to go down 1. Since amplitude is 1, I'm going up to 0, down to negative 2. It's all centered off that negative 1. Sine graph, I can draw that in, like my 0, my pi, my 2 pi. Again, this is just your parent graph, really. The rest of those filled in. All right, so now I'm going to add pi over 2 to each one of those. Since I'm going to the right, this tends to be a little bit easier than going to the left. Again, negative 1 is where I'm going down to. I have my 0, I have my negative 2. All right, so when I go to the right now, that's 0 plus pi over 2 puts me in pi over 2. All right, pi over 2 plus pi over 2 puts me up at pi. Remember, that's the top point. It's at 0. That's the y value. The x value is over at pi. All right, again, for these, I mean, in reality, you could probably just take this and draw this in. Okay, pi plus 1/2, so 1 plus 1/2 is going to give me 3 pi over 2. Notice these are very similar to the numbers you had up here. 3 pi over 2 plus 1/2 is going to give me 2 pi. And then finally, we have 2 pi plus 1/2 is going to give us 5 pi over 2. All right, number 6, we have a negative cotangent 2 theta plus 4. So when I see that we're going to have a couple of changes here. The negative means it's going to be a reflection over the x-axis. We're also going to be moved up 4, which is the plus 4. Oh, there are my changes. I put those in the wrong spot. Let me go back and fix that. All right, so that's going to be a reflection over the x-axis, and again, the up 4. Period here is going to change. Typically, it's pi is going to be divided by 2, so that's going to be pi over 2. There's never an amplitude for cotangent. All right, so when I do this, I'm really going to be taking a cotangent graph, flipping it upside down, and I'm moving it up 4, and I'm making it thinner. So there's a whole bunch of stuff going on here. So before I do any of that, I'm going to draw out what our typical cotangent graph looks like. So we have an asymptote at 0, and pi, and it comes down through pi over 2. So I'm going to take that, I'm going to squish that. Remember, whatever you do to the period, you also have to do to the asymptotes. All right, so I'm going to move this up 4. So I'm going to actually change this so that I can go up 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So that is now my new center line. That's where everything is going to be centered out of. All right. So again, asymptotes start at 0 and pi. I'm going to divide those by 2 because that's what I did to my period. So that means they're going to be at 0 and pi over 2. So I can draw those in right now if I wanted to. 0 and pi over 2. Make sure you do label those. All right, my middle mark here, the pi over 2, take care of that's going to be pi over 4. All right, and now remember when you're doing this, it's an upside down one, so it's actually going to end up looking very similar to a cotangent graph. I'm sorry, to a tangent graph. That's going to be pi over 4. All right, next one, number 7. We have y equals our cosecant, 2 secant of 1/2 theta. So amplitude there is going to be 2. Period here is going to be 4 pi. Remember, we take 2 pi divided by the 1/2. All right, there are no other changes. That's none. And the asymptotes, we will eventually have those. All right, so when I draw this out, amplitude is up to 2, down to negative 2. All right, secant matches up with the cosine graph. So I'm going to draw a regular cosine graph. I'm going to stretch all the way out to 4 pi. So that means now this is really all the way out here at 4 pi. All right, again, notice that the amplitude went up to 2, down to negative 2. Halfway is going to be at 2 pi. That means this point is at pi, which again starts at 0, and this is 3 pi right there. The asymptotes, remember, they're always where you cut it. Okay, at the zeros, that's going to be at pi. I don't like that. I'm going to redo that a little bit better there. So I'm going to, again, bring that down, cut it at pi, and cut it at 3 pi. So they, again, are the asymptotes. And then from there, this is where we take it and we flip it. Remember, I always share that point at the top of the hill, goes up towards the asymptote, does not touch the asymptote. Same thing here at the bottom of the valve, going down towards the bottom. Number 8, amplitude there is going to give me a 1/2, the number in front of the trig function. Period is going to remain 2 pi. I'm going to take this and move to the right pi over 2. All right, so again, just like I've done every other time, when I'm moving to the right, I always like to draw it out first without it moved to the right. So cosecant matches up with sine. So we're going up to 1/2, down to -1/2. We're going to have our sine graph here. And we're going all the way out to 2 pi. So pi, this is just your regular parent graph. That's what these numbers are coming from. All right, so now I'm going to take that, I'm going to add pi over 2 to each one of those. I'm going to the right. So again, just like before, going to the right tends to be a little bit easier. Asymptote has not changed still. I'm sorry, amplitude hasn't changed still, the 1/2 and the -1/2. All right, now all I have to do is shift it to the right. So when I shift it to the right, that means I'm going to be out over here. The 0 plus pi over 2 puts me at pi over 2. All right, pi over 2 plus pi over 2 puts me at pi. Again, from here now, at this point, you can just draw this in. Just make them more curved. All right, so pi over 2 pi. Next one, pi plus pi over 2 is going to be 3 pi over 2. 3 pi over 2 plus pi over 2 is going to give me 2 pi. And the last one, 2 pi plus pi over 2 is going to give me 5 pi over 2. All right, so my asymptotes are going to be at the pi over 2, 3 pi over 2, and 5 pi over 2. So I will fill those in. And I will draw them in. And now we just have to take that where we just cut it and flip it. Again, share the point, bring it up. Make sure you're not crossing over those asymptotes.